horrendous level of trauma or injustice could have occurred to fuel a haunting so intense that it lasted for decades. Based in the rural northeast of England, close to the Suffolk border, there is a small, quaint village called Borley. Unlike other villages, Borley holds a dark and sinister secret. Upon this pleasant green land once stood one of the world's most haunted buildings, Borley Rectory. The rectory was designed by Angus Pugin and built in 1862 to house the Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Bull and his family. Just 1 year later, when they moved into the rectory, the first documented strange occurrence happened. Henry's 4 daughters were out in the garden one day, and all of them saw what appeared to be a robed figure at the end of the garden. It seemed to be pacing up and down with its head bowed down, as if in prayer. When they went to confront the vision, it vanished right before their very eyes. It is rumoured that on the grounds of the rectory in 1362 once stood a monastery. The story that is passed down is that of a monk who fell in love with a nun from a nearby convent. It was kept a secret until the nun fell pregnant. When the affair was discovered, the monk was executed, and his lover and child were both bricked up inside the walls of the convent, alive. Other strange occurrences were reported during the Ellis Bull occupation of the house. Strange, unexplainable noises were often heard, as well as guests seeing shadowy figures moving around from the corners of their eyes. Over the next couple of decades, the weird happenings and sightings continued, one of the most common being that of a phantom stagecoach being driven past the house by 2 headless horsemen. On the 2nd of October 1928, Reverend Guy Eric Smith and his wife moved into the property. Not long after this, while cleaning out some cupboards in the house, the pair found a large brown paper bag containing the skull of a young woman. The discovery of the skull seemed to amplify activity inside the rectory. Ghostly footsteps were heard daily. The servants' bells would ring out constantly, even though all the cables had been cut many years before. Bright blinding lights would appear in the windows and corners of the room, taking Mr. and Mrs. Smith by surprise on many occasions. Unsure of what to do, they spoke to someone who worked at the Daily Mirror, requesting they make contact with someone from the Society of Psychical Research on their behalf. The newspaper ran articles on the strange activity that was plaguing Borley Rectory, and arranged for the famous paranormal investigator Harry Price to visit the property to conduct various experiments around the house and to do extensive research into the ground upon the building stood.
What is psychical research? A popular opinion says that it means going to seances, holding hands in the dark, singing hymns, and perhaps getting in touch with your dead relatives. But in this, popular opinion is only partly correct, because it is confusing a psychical research with a spiritualism. A psychical research is a science and is rapidly becoming an exact science. Its object is to ascertain by exact experimental methods how far the alleged phenomena of the seance room can be brought into line with normality. These phenomena, which are produced by people who claim abnormal powers and who call themselves mediums, can be divided into physical and mental. The mental includes clairvoyance, psychometry, the direct voice which spirits are supposed to produce at seances, and similar manifestations. The physical phenomena includes telekinesis, or the abnormal movement of objects without physical contact, the poltergeist phenomena you read about in connection with haunted houses, and similar manifestations. There is an idea that the study of alleged abnormal phenomena is quite modern, but that is not the case. People have been interested in psychic phenomena from the very earliest times. and even the literature of the subject is very old. In our research library of some 12,000 volumes, we have books going back right to the 16th century.
Price reported witnessing stones being thrown from one side of the room to another, spirit messages being tapped on a mirror in the house, as well as a vase shattering and breaking without warning, right before his very eyes. The Smiths didn't remain at the rectory long after this, leaving on the 14th of July 1929. By this time, Borley Rectory had become quite notorious for its hauntings. This made it extremely difficult to find someone to replace the Smiths. However, a year later, Reverend Lionel Algernon Foister and his wife Mary Ann moved in, along with their daughter Adelaide. Just like the occupants before them, the new hosts experienced paranormal activity near enough from the day they moved in. Lionel Foister kept a diary, since most days had one or more instances of strange and sometimes horrifying events happening in and around the rectory. He sent a copy of it to Harry Price, knowing he was a leading expert on the hauntings at Borley. It went into great detail to explain how the activity started off, with stones and bottles being thrown around by an unseen force, the windows shattering and doors locking by themselves. On one occasion, actually trapping his daughter Adelaide in a room where she was left shaken up and screaming for help. It also stated how his wife Mary Ann Foister was dragged from her bed in the dead of night. Reverend Lionel Foister actually attempted to rid the building of whatever it is that resides there by performing an exorcism. During the ancient ritual, the Reverend was struck on the shoulder by a large tennis ball sized rock that seemed to appear from nowhere. The exorcism failed. After the failed attempt to restore normality back to Borley Rectory, the Foisters left, leaving the house once again empty. Sensing that Borley Rectory might possibly hold the key into the world of the paranormal that Harry Price had spent his life chasing, he brought up a year-long lease on the building. He invited other like-minded people to stay and help him try different methods of contacting the dead. During a planchette séance that took place, 2 spirits were contacted. One of a 17th century French nun, and the second was a darker spirit who identified himself as Sunu Amuez. He warned that he would burn the building to the ground, and that a murdered body would be revealed. Just under 1 year later, Borley Rectory was burned to the ground. After an investigation, the official story is that an oil lamp was knocked over, causing the destruction. However, during the fire, a neighbour and Miss Williams come forward claiming to see the figure of a nun in the upstairs window. Years later, in 1943, Harry Price conducted a dig of the burnt-out building's basement. The bones of a young woman were discovered. The bones were taken over to the nearby Borley Church to be buried. Since then, the church has reported a similar haunting.
The first experience for me was phenomenal. It was really phenomenal. It's about the only place, other than going into a home where poltergeist activity is prominent, that everything happens as soon as you get involved. As soon as you walk in, as soon as you get involved in going into this church and beginning your research, something is bound to happen. Now that first day, I had a very skeptical researcher with me. He was a newspaper man from Danbury, and he was obnoxiously skeptical. But he was keeping a full diary for me, so he was very, very helpful. I worried about what his effect was going to have on this building. So I was in and I was discerning. I was standing down by the altar. I was with a group of people, and I was discerning. When all of a sudden, he came charging in through the back door. And he said, "Something is hitting me. It's hitting me. It's hitting me." And he was absolutely hysterical. He was hysterical. Now, at that point, he said, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe."